again, football fans, and welcome to another Wednesday night episode of Miners Live, the kickoff of RFL All Night. I am your host, head coach, and general manager of the Sacramento Miners, Chris Dunn, and plenty of topics to get into tonight on the show. First off, as you can see, I am not doing the show from the friendly confines of my home studio. I guess you could call this Miners Live on the road, or maybe a Miners Live scouting trip. But the confines of a hotel room somewhere just outside of Orlando, Florida. So definitely not going to let location stop me from getting everything that you need to know and want to know as we head into the RFL podcast later on tonight. So don't forget, 8:30 p.m. tonight, the RFL podcast will get you through all of the games from this past weekend, the top 10 power rankings, and also what to look forward to this coming weekend. But until then, plenty to get through here today. So I guess let's just get right to it. I've got my good buddy Forbes in the back, keeping you guys in line in the chat. So shout out to Forbes for doing that for me. And as we see things come through, we'll definitely get them on for you guys. But we'll go ahead and get right into it. And a new segment that I'm going to try to do for you guys regularly. If I'm not able to do it every week, I'll try to do it every week, but obviously might not be able to. Where Dunner was right, where Dunner was wrong. You guys often want to call me the Colin Cowherd of the RFL, so I'm going to give you a Colin Cowherd segment. So where Dunner was right, where Dunner was wrong. Where Dunner was right, let's just start with the Chicago Tigers, right? The Chicago Tigers are a good team. The Chicago Tigers are going to make the playoffs. None of you thought that at the beginning of the year. I didn't think they were going to make the playoffs, but I knew the Chicago Tigers were going to be close. And a lot of people wrote this team off at the beginning of the year based on what they did last year. Whether that is solely based on the performance of last year, or maybe it's partly based on the performance of last year and partly based on maybe not having seen enough from Coach Stein leading up to this season to warrant any kind of playoff buzz, that's fine. But the reality of the situation is I knew this Tigers team was going to be good, and this Tigers team is very good. Another one, this one was not well-liked or well-received at any point during the draft or at any point leading up to the draft or just after the draft when I made my case. Tyler Cage is not as good as Jacob Reed. He's not. And for everybody that thought that Tyler Cage was the next coming of middle linebacker or linebacker in general in the RFL, he's not Jacob Reed. Jacob Reed is a better linebacker than Tyler Cage. Don't tell me, oh, well, he was in the league last year. This is his second year. He set an RFL record for tackles in a season as a rookie. Talk to me when Tyler Cage gets over 190 tackles by the end of this year. Oh, wait, he won't because he's got 57 right now. Jacob Reed is a better linebacker than Tyler Cage, and now you can't even argue it. I may have been wrong in the sense that I didn't think Tyler Cage would have 3 interceptions as a rookie, and he does. But the bottom line is Tyler Cage is better than Jacob Reed, or Jacob Reed is better than Tyler Cage. And then lastly, DJ Evans was not just the first receiver off the board that I wanted, but also having conversations. I know Mitch had him as his number one receiver as well. DJ Evans is proving he's the best wide receiver in this draft class. It's not Sharkley, and it's not Caleb Houston. At this particular point in time, for my money, DJ Evans is without question the best wide receiver in this draft class, the best rookie wide receiver so far this season. If you look at the big three, right, the big three guys I mentioned, Caleb Houston, DJ Sharkley, DJ Evans and Shark. So Devontre Sharkley. at the draft, Houston, 79 overall, Sharkley, 78 overall, and DJ Evans, 76 overall. Mitchie, you're just wrong. Like, it's not even close. Like, I'm mind blown that you still believe that, but you're wrong. So Caleb Houston was a 79, Sharkley was a 78, Evans was a 76. Oh, well, then something's not updated. Something was wrong on the site then. And even still, what was it, 119? He's still not getting 196 or 197. Anyway, it does, guys. Jacob Reed is better than Tyler Cage. Houston, Sharkley, Evans, 79, 78, 76. Evans was the number 3 of those big 3, and he was 3 overalls behind Caleb Houston. Now, at about the 3/4 poll of the season, Caleb Houston is an 80, Sharkley is an 80, DJ Evans is an 82. DJ Evans has gone up 6 overalls, while Houston went up 1 and Sharkley went up 2. And not just that, DJ Evans has 7 touchdowns this year. DJ Evans is the best receiver, certainly of those big 3. And now, where I was wrong, because for every right, there's got to be a wrong. Everybody has to have a counterbalance. If you don't have a counterbalance, you can't keep yourself accountable. You can't keep yourself in check. So where Dunner was right, where Dunner was wrong. So Dunner was wrong. At the beginning of the season, I said Owen Jack was a sleeper MVP candidate. Now, you can laugh at the statement, but if you do, you don't really understand what the concept of a sleeper is. A sleeper MVP candidate is not saying he's going to win the MVP. After, I think it was 2 weeks of the season, Owen Jack had, I believe, 7 touchdowns and no interceptions, or 7 touchdowns and 1 interception. And if you look at that in a vacuum and you extrapolate that over the course of a season, it's not outrageous to think that those numbers over the course of a 17-game season would be MVP candidate worthy. Now, it's been proven wrong. Owen Jack is not in the running for MVP consideration. He will not be in the running for MVP consideration. The San Antonio Dreadnoughts offense, many of us thought was going to take a step up this season, and it hasn't. It has definitively taken a step down. You're not going to win football games in the RFL when you only score 14 points, and the Dreadnoughts did last week. So a win is a win, and in the RFL, you'll take all the wins you can get. But you're not going to win many games scoring 14 points. And right now, Owen Jack is inconsistent. He's 100% dependent on Cam Jones. And until he's able to find that other guy, that other outlet, that statement of Owen Jack being a sleeper candidate for MVP will continue to be wrong. All right, so where Dunner was right, where Dunner was wrong. Guys, feel free. If you think that there's something that I have had a take on, or I've said in the last few weeks, or maybe in the last few months even, and you feel that it has been proven to be wrong, let me know. If there's something I might not be thinking of that I was definitely right on, and you think that it's been proven to be right, then let me know. I'm going to do my best to come up with what I can, but obviously we live in the day and age where you guys love taking receipts. So you're going to love every second of being able to timestamp something that I said and prove and tell me that I was wrong. So this is your opportunity. Timestamp away. At any point during the show, I say something, hold on to that receipt and let me know in a couple weeks. and it could possibly be part of a future segment of Where Dunner Was Wrong. So again, Where Dunner Was Right, Where Dunner Was Wrong. We'll continue that moving forward. But right now, I want to get into something that happened over the weekend that a lot of you may have seen, and it's something that I didn't envision happening this season. To be perfectly honest, I didn't envision this happening possibly ever. And it's exciting that it did. I'm happy that it did. I wasn't a believer that it was going to happen, and certainly happen right now. But Joseph Fontanez made his RFL debut, and there was a lot of speculation. There was a lot of conversation. There was a lot of debate, certainly on this show, about whether Joseph Fontanez was the guy, whether it was the time to make this move. Regardless, the move was made, and Joseph Fontanez got his RFL debut last week for the OKC Lancers. And so I thought it only fitting to bring him on the show. So why not go ahead out to the phones, go ahead out to the cameras, if you will, and we will bring in Joseph Fontanez. What's going on, buddy?
You already know. I'm good. Feeling good.
How you feeling?
Oh man, excited. It was great to step on that field. Be a part of the RFL finally, and be a part of the team, and get some snaps in real time, and feel the vibe out there, especially at home where it was electric.
I know, obviously, you would have liked to have got the win. That didn't happen. You did throw your first touchdown pass. Walk me through what that was like to see your guy out there and throw that touchdown.
Ah man, nerves. No lie, plenty of nerves. From my college days, I tried to fix a lot of my mistakes, a lot of interceptions and fumbles. I try to take care of the ball more now. Um, and I believe I did a lot of that this first game. I, there was a lot left on the field, but there's also some mistakes that I didn't make. The RFL is totally a lot faster than the college, so I have to step up. I have to really focus on my development and make sure that I'm ready to really take over this team and take it to new heights.
Sure. I see behind you, you've got a championship belt there.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
what's that all about?
Now big wrestling fan. I've been a big wrestling fan since a kid. I actually watch every single type of wrestling, so it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's WWE, ROH, MLW, you name it, I watch it. It's just something I love to watch.
Yeah.
Between that and football, that's both of my favorite sports.
So I was a huge wrestling fan. What more so when I was younger. I do have some buddies that are big into it now, so I've gotten a little bit more into it recently than I had been in the last 5 to 10 years. Um, who's your favorite wrestler?
Ah man, to say favorite, it's hard to say because individually and all different organizations, I can say I have one guy that I truly love. Like right now in WWE, I can watch Seth Rollins do whatever he wants with his crazy mode right now,
Yeah,
and he's great. Even though I love Roman from the good guy to the bad guy that he is now, I love
yeah.
it, the whole twist. And then in AEW, I still love Jericho. He's a full honored old school OG, so I love him. And there's plenty of other guys out there, that Daniel Bryan. There's plenty of other guys I like out there.
Did you think Cody Rhodes was going to beat Roman Reigns at WrestleMania?
Definitely not.
You
Definitely
didn't.
not. Heck no. No, no,
Why? Why not?
no. One, since for me, since Triple H took over control of creative, I'm feeling like Triple H is not just gonna hand that brass ring to him that easily. He's gonna have to earn it. And when it comes to it, I believe he's gonna win it in a match that most people are not gonna expect him to win it. I believe he's gonna win it in multi-man match most likely, but right now I think it was the best choice because as you can see, it's the biggest news right now in wrestling. Why Cody didn't win the belt.
Right. I mean, it certainly would be a legacy builder for him.
Oh no, definitely to do something that his father supposedly didn't do, but he did do, but they don't want to really put it on the history books. Yeah, definitely.
All right, so switching gears back to the RFL. So we're heading into week 13. Obviously, an automatic win for you guys, but then week 14 on the road against the Sacramento Condors. Week 15, you're home against the Orlando Wizards. Then another auto win. Week 17 at the Toronto Thunderbirds, and week 18 at the Austin Desperados. So it's not hard to look at the schedule here and see that you've got 4 remaining RFL games. 3 of them are on the road, and 2 of them are very difficult teams. And really, you could make the case that they're all going to be difficult games out there. What is your goal for yourself the rest of the way?
Myself, I can only focus on one thing is making sure that I'm helping my team win. So, yeah, the teams that are we facing, the 4 teams that are left, is very, very difficult. Um, some teams are very good at their defense, especially like the Thunderbirds, amazing defensive team. Um, I'm actually looking forward to the game between the Wizards
Sure.
because in college me and Leo met up when he was in VT, so it'll be something I would like to once again see.
You gonna throw it
Me
to
and
him?
him. Ah man,
You gonna throw at him?
me and Moon, we good friends, off the field, and we're very good competitors on the field. And to play each other once again, that's an honor I like to see. But for me, I just want to make sure that I'm doing what I got to do, take care of the ball, put my team in the best position I can to win every game that we can win. Try to focus and make myself a lot better for my team in the future because that's all I'm building on. Because I know that right now we're out of the playoffs. All we're playing for is the honor of winning. So
Sure.
that's what I'm focused on right now.
And development. I mean, at this point, the all you can do is you can look towards the future and get better the rest of the way. Again, 4 RFL games remain on the schedule. So, work as hard as you can, grind through
Yeah,
those
definitely.
games, and then next year, right? I mean, it looks like you fight through camp, and then next year you're ready to go and primed to possibly get the Lancers to the playoffs next season, right?
Exactly. Because it's in the RFL, it's not promised. You got to work hard and earn every single snap to be the starter in this league. So yeah, and my development has got to be the key. I gotta be at every game. I gotta be watching every team. I gotta make sure even during the break, I gotta make sure I'm there watching what's going on in the college league and just develop myself more and more and just to make sure that once I get to camp next year, I'm the one. I'm the guy. I'm
Yeah.
not riding the pine no more.
Yeah, make sure you get in the GM's ear and say, "Hey, don't go drafting a quarterback in the first round." All right.
Yeah. Now front office is out of my hands, so I can only just do what I can. If they see my focus, they see my determination, they see that I'm there and I'm doing everything I can to make sure that I'm gonna develop myself to the highest level. I believe they'll do what's best for me and the team because that's all I want to make sure that I bring OKC to the promised land one day. And
That's it. Let's
I'm
go.
young.
Let's go.
I'm young
Offensive
in the
line,
game, man.
offensive line, offensive line. All right, man.
Yeah,
Well, I appreciate you coming on. Obviously, listen, I'll be the first to tell you I was a little bit skeptical. I didn't know how this was going to play out. But I'm happy to see that you you stuck through the grind, and here you are. So best of luck for you moving forward. And you certainly got a believer in me, and I'll be sure to tune in and follow you the rest of the way, see what you can do, and then best of luck next season as well.
All right, thank you, my man. Thank you for having me here, and yeah, I hope I do everybody proud and show that I belong here in the RFL.
All right, buddy. We'll talk soon. Take care, man. Thanks again for coming on.
No problem, man. Anytime.
All right, so there it is. Joseph Fontanez, quarterback for the Oklahoma City Lancers. 26 of 44, 285 yards and a touchdown. He was sacked 4 times on the afternoon and was pressured 7 times. So certainly was under duress throughout the game. It was a tightly contested game. We saw Fontanez hit a deep ball down the field, which was nice to see him connect on a deep ball. But in the end, the Lancers just unable to get the victory. But again, thanks again to Joseph Fontanez for coming on and kind of reliving his RFL debut. And so to piggyback off of that, I thought, well, here's Joseph Fontanez making his RFL debut. What other guys are there? What other guys out there have we kind of forgotten about? What guys from either the draft class last year, Joseph Fontanez's draft class, or what guys that are rookies this year have not been fortunate in the sense that they were drafted into a starting role. And because of that, they're sort of down on the depth chart and not getting a lot of run, their names not being spoken as much. Who are some of those guys? Like, I guess, who's the next man up, right? Like, if Joseph Fontanez makes his RFL debut this past weekend, who could we be looking at next? And maybe it's not necessarily an RFL debut, but who are some of those guys that aren't starters right now? Maybe they're getting a little bit of playing time, but names that we could see take a jump either between now and the end of the season or by the beginning of next season and certainly throughout next season. So I've got a bunch of ARC names here that I want to go over. And next week, I'll try to come up with a bunch of NRC guys as well. So first guy I'm going to bring up here is a division mate of mine, the Sacramento Miners. And he is a wide receiver for a team that I just talked about struggling offensively this season and not living up to expectations this season. And if Owen Jack is ever going to make his way to the promised land, other guys are going to have to step up other than Cam Jones. And perhaps one of those guys that might find himself there soon is Vince Waynes. So Vince Waynes is a rookie wide receiver out of Florida State. And the case for him is pretty simple. Leffie Whimper, that experiment failed. He's just not doing anything of note. He's not really doing much to help the Dreadnoughts in any way, shape, or form. He's not drawing defenders away from Cam Jones. I believe he's got 88 speed. Maybe on a, maybe with the wind at his back, he's got 89 speed, right? Like, I just don't see Leffie Whimper doing all that much. And at this point, that is a failed experiment. And so you got Dawson Banks, who was drafted last season, and you've got Vince Waynes, who was drafted this season, 5th round, 31st pick in the 5th round. So a late pick there for the Dreadnoughts, but a guy that could step up as early as next season, right? Like there's a case to be made that Vince Waynes is wide receiver 3 on the Dreadnoughts at the beginning of next season. Now, again, that is assuming they don't add a wide receiver in free agency. They don't add a day one starter at wide receiver through the draft, and Dawson Banks doesn't shine and, eventually work his way ahead of Vince Waynes. But for me right now, Vince Waynes is that wide receiver 4 on that team. Leffie Whimper's gone at the end of the year if Frankie knows what he's doing. And Vince Waynes could step into that wide receiver 3 role. You saw Frankie chime in there. He's showing signs of progress. This guy could be good. He showed spot, signs of greatness at Florida State. I think it was like his first game at Florida State. I know he was a 2-year guy at Florida State. I want to say it was his first game there or his second game there. Up over 125, 130 yards, I believe it was, a touchdown or maybe 2. And then he just kind of fell off. He wasn't that guy on a regular basis, but he was definitely Florida State's best offensive weapon. And so because he wasn't a user, because he was in a wide receiver heavy draft class, he fell to the 5th round, and the San Antonio Dreadnoughts scooped him up, and now they may have themselves a really good wide receiver 3, young wide receiver 3 moving forward. So Vince Waynes for me is a guy that don't be surprised if he is that next man up. Again, getting a little bit of run right now, has already made his debut, if you will. But if you're talking about next man up, I certainly think that Vince Waynes could be that guy. We'll keep it in the ARC South. And another guy that I look at, again, wide receiver in the division. So I'm going to get good looks at this guy on a regular basis. And you all know the name, or at least you should know the name, but Chris Braun of the Austin Armadillos. Okay, so we're talking about a star dev, 22-year-old wide receiver who's already a 79 overall. For probably 65% of the teams in the RFL, he's already a starter. Right? Jordy Johnson is a pending free agent. So depending on, what that looks like for the Armadillos, are they going to bring Jordy Johnson back? I don't think that they are. I think that Jordy Johnson will find himself as a free agent. And I think that paves the way for Chris Braun to step up and get his chance. You can see the numbers right there so far this year, 18 receptions, 179 yards, and 1 touchdown. That's in very, very limited playing time. So I would anticipate Chris Braun to be one of those guys. I mean, listen, everything is there for him to be that guy. If Chris Braun were on the Sacramento Miners, he would already be wide receiver 3. And he would be getting a lot more run than this. But the fact of the matter is that the Armadillos had other guys there. And now if you take a look at the Armadillos and what their situation looks like moving forward, let me pull it up here. So we've got Jordy Johnson is a free agent at the end of the year. And then Maurice Darman and Rashard Woodard are going to be ahead of Chris Braun. Those guys are going to be there. Those guys are still under contract. And so they will be there. And Chris Braun could very easily slide into that wide receiver 3 role. Now, if you take a look at Darman and Woodard, Maurice Darman is 32 years old. So there's a chance Darman retires. Rashard Woodard is 30 years old. There's a chance he regresses. So what I'm saying here is that there is an opportunity, and it's not that far-fetched. There is an opportunity here where Chris Braun is the best wide receiver on that roster entering the season. Again, a lot of things would have to fall his way. A lot of things would have to not happen, I guess, if you will. The Austin Armadillos would have to not draft a day 1 starting wide receiver. They would have to not have Maurice Darman retire, Rashard Woodard regress. There's a lot of things that would have to, dominoes that would have to fall accordingly in order for Chris Braun to step into that top wide receiver on the team. I don't envision that happening, But what I do envision happening is Chris Braun easily being wide receiver 3 and possibly even wide receiver 2 on that team. So again, just another guy to think about as we start getting to the point where, why would you not bring Jordy Johnson back? I mean, looking at, let's look at, I mean, I don't have access to what he wants, what he's asking. But there's several guys. Let's see. Jordy Johnson, you're going to have to re-sign. Travis Burgess, you're going to have to re-sign, who I would bring back. Depending on how long you sign him, I get that Jordy Johnson's young. So why wouldn't you bring him back? I get it because he's young. But how much is that going to command? How much is that going to take away from the team moving forward? At this point, the team is kind of mired in, at least in my opinion, mired in mediocrity. They're not really taking significant steps to consider themselves contenders. You can make a case that they're regressing week by week this season alone. So yeah, it certainly makes sense to bring Jordy Johnson back in terms of his talent and in terms of his age. And obviously you want to try to bring him back if those other guys regress, or if those other guys, in the case of Darman, if he retires, it doesn't look like you resigned him. I didn't see it in the transactions, but if you did, it's not updated. And again, no one has access to see what he's asking. I'm curious to see what a 25-year-old like Jordy Johnson, a 25-year-old 86 overall superstar dev, is asking, becoming a free agent for the first time. For you to say that he's not asking a lot, then you're getting a hometown discount. Because if he's not asking a lot, when you compare his salary to other guys that are of similar ilk, 86 overall superstars, he's probably a bargain. And so if that's the case and he's not asking a lot, well, then again, it's a no-brainer. But looking at what a 25-year-old, going to be 26-year-old, 86 overall superstar might ask, if he's not asking it, great, then armadillos, sign him and consider yourselves lucky moving forward. And then a couple other guys here that, let's see. A couple guys here actually two guys from the same team in the ARC North. So we talk about the ARC North and how tightly contested the ARC North is year in, year out. But there's a couple names here. One of them is the obvious name, right? We just saw Joseph Fontanez make his RFL debut. And so everyone is probably wondering, when is Calvin Poole going to get his opportunity, right? He was the first quarterback drafted in the draft this year. He's the Mackey Award winner. Holden Wolf's a pending free agent. It's not a secret at this point. Holden Wolf's not going to get re-signed. Calvin Poole will be the starter of that team next year. So could we see Calvin Poole start this year? The Huskies got a great win this past weekend. Holden Wolf threw for 3 touchdowns. So certainly any momentum that Calvin Poole had towards getting a starting opportunity stalled, to say the least. So at this particular point, again, it remains to be seen, but Calvin Poole is certainly one of those guys. And could we see him? But the guy that I'm really looking at is a name that was very popular last year during the draft. He was one of the best defensive players in the draft. He was easily one of the best linebackers in the draft, and that's Dan Glissick. We're talking about a 21-year-old, 78 overall, first-round pick last year. And when you look at the current structure of the Toronto Huskies, they've got AJ Pestock, who they re-signed. Fortunately for them, wasn't commanding a ton of money, Wasn't asking for a ton of money, so they were able to re-sign him. But again, he's not getting any younger, so AJ Pestock might start to show some signs of regression. And at 33 years old, Brett Rattay might retire, right? So if you look at the Toronto Huskies, and let's pull them up here. If you look at the Toronto Huskies, and you've got AJ Pestock there, who is, I believe, 29, entering his age 30 season next year. So AJ Pestock is 29. He'll be 30. Brett Rattay is 33. So if he plays next year, he'll be playing at age 34. So you've got a case there where Dan Glissick could slide up and should slide up. Even if Brett Rattay doesn't retire, I could very easily envision a scenario where regression hits so bad that he slides from an 83. And at that point, why wouldn't you start Dan Glissick over Brett Rattay? Right? So it just makes sense. AJ Pestock, again, another guy there that could see some regression. And obviously they have superstar outside linebacker in Michael Pratt, who's holding it down there. But as far as the middle linebacker position goes, AJ Pestock's there. They re-signed him. He's there for a couple more years. Brett Rattay, again, at this point, is a placeholder. Whether or not he retires remains to be seen. And even if he does retire, there's no reason why the Huskies don't take Dan Glissick and put him alongside AJ Pestock. It just makes the most sense. You don't draft a middle linebacker in the first round if you're not willing to give him an opportunity to start within his first 2 seasons. Right? Like if you show me a GM that drafts a linebacker, I believe Glissick was top 12. I want to say he was like 12th overall. If somebody has that, I don't know if Forbes or if you have that. But if you're going to, if you're a GM and you're drafting a linebacker in the first round, you're going to start him at some point within the first 2 seasons. Otherwise, you just made a terrible decision during the draft. Why on earth would you draft a linebacker and not start him in the first round? Why would you draft a first-round linebacker and not start him until his 3rd year in the league? Right? And the Huskies aren't going to be in a position where, you know, I don't even think it's going to be that much of a conversation. You saw Smitty say Glissick's the guy. You know, obviously things can happen where he isn't the guy, but looking at the situation, Dan Glissick should be that guy. Now, maybe he starts to get a little bit more run this year. I have to take a look. Does he have, what's he got so far this year? He's got 1 tackle so far this year in a week 5 game against the Aviators. So at this point, Dan Glissick has done nothing for the Huskies. He hasn't had to. But moving forward next season, Glissick's going to have to step up, and the Huskies are expecting him to step up. So that's what I've got there for next man up. Obviously, we saw Joseph Fontanez make his debut, so I wanted to take some time and kind of go over some of those other guys that we could start to see those dominoes fall in place. Some of the guys that were drafted last year, some of the guys that were drafted this year, and the playing time that they might start to receive moving forward. The other thing I wanted to get into here, and I don't particularly like this topic. I don't like talking about this. I think this is kind of, I think this is silly to me, but there has been conversation about it, and people are talking about it. People have opinions about it, whether they agree, disagree, whatever the case might be. There are people out there, and there's plenty of conversation going around the RFL world right now about job security for coaches, and certain coaches in particular. And, you know, I'm not going to sit here and say so-and-so doesn't deserve to be the coach of this team. So-and-so doesn't deserve to be the coach of that team. This is a difficult league. It's not easy to come into this league and have success. I would argue that I've come into the league. This is my 3rd year in the league, and I've had success. However, there are people out there that might say, I haven't had success. Depending on what your definition of success is. And so there's been conversation and there's been people talking. And for those of you that watched Back Talk last night, you heard the guys talk about the Sentinels and Coach Tor. And you also heard them talk about a little bit about Coach O'Brien and the Snowhawks. And so for me, I'm not going to get into the Sentinels and Coach Tor and whatever people's opinions on him might be. But the reality of the situation is, for me, if I'm looking at the Portland Snowhawks, and I'm looking in particular at Mitch, at Coach O'Brien, I don't understand how, when, where, or why this conversation would have ever been brought up in any setting whatsoever. And I say that because we're talking about a team that went to the Relo Bowl 2 years ago. And I understand they got the doors blown off them in the Relo Bowl, but they got there. You know what I would do to get my team to the Relo Bowl? There we go. Confirmation. That is the first time. Thank you, Smitty. Come on. Can we get that back up on the screen for a minute? Don't give me no 5 second claim to fame here. I can't get that one back up. Forbes, what are you doing? You're killing me. I get one little moment. I get one little shout out there. I've been trying so hard to get credit for winning the division 2 years in a row, and I get nothing for it. Finally, that one little moment, Smitty says, if you're making the playoffs, you're good. You're doing your thing. I'll take that. I'll take that as a victory. So anyway, I digress. I look at the Snowhawks, and I just don't understand why this was a conversation, right? If I go back and I look at this season, right? So let's take a peek at where we are right now. All right. So if I'm just looking at this year, right now, we've got coaches that are 2-7 in RFL games, 2-5 in RFL games, 3-6, 3-4, 3-4, 3-3, 3-4. There are a lot of coaches out there that are below 500 in RFL games. And those coaches didn't go to the Relo Bowl 2 years ago. I understand the Snowhawks underperformed last year and they didn't make the playoffs. And that sucks. Obviously, when you come off of the appearance in the Relo Bowl, especially losing the way that you lost, you'd like to get back out there. You'd like to at least make another run. And that just wasn't the case for them last year. I believe they went 7-9 last season. So let's go back to the last 2 seasons. So that was this year. But let's even go back to season 6. So season 6, this is where the Snowhawks went to the Relo Bowl. Where is he? 7-5. So Coach O'Brien, 7-5 in RFL games. What did you say? The Relo Bowl appearance was the biggest accomplishment of that team, but didn't even win. It was not here. So what? I mean, I won the division 2 years in a row. I would trade winning both of those division titles for one Relo Bowl appearance. And when he took over the team, I can understand that the team's underperforming. And I guess reading this, I guess I now know where this conversation and everything started from, which is just, again, it's kind of mind-blowing for me when I look at season 6, 7-5 RFL record. Okay. The Cougars were 7-5. The Dreadnoughts were 7-5. The Voyagers were 7-5. The Sentinels and Red Dragons were 6-6. The Bulldogs were 3-9, and the Wizards were 1-11. All of those coaches were the same record 2 years ago or worse, and half, maybe the majority of those guys you wouldn't question. Then you look at season 7, and again, this is the season that they disappointed, right? But you've still got the Aviators were 5-7 in RFL games. The Dreadnoughts were 4-8 in RFL games. The Red Dragons were 5-7. The Wizards were 5-7. The Tigers were 3-9. The Diablos were 4-8. It's not like we're talking about a coach who is finishing in last place all the time. Now, I get the talent around the team, and if the team is so talented, oh my God, what are we doing? Why are there so many comments popping up? What? Can't read them all. Which ones do you want me to read? Had the easiest road to the Real Bowl. That's debatable. I mean, to say somebody had the easiest road to the Real Bowl, I mean, that's subjective. You don't know what's going to happen at the beginning of the season. I didn't even get to read it all. So if you can't pop it back up, oh, I got it right here. They did beat the Explorers that year, but with what the team has, you don't know the history. I mean, what history I do know is that 2 of the last 3 years they went to the playoffs. 1 year they went to the Relo Bowl, and the worst below 500 they've ever finished is the worst in RFL games they've ever finished is 5-7. Right. So, I mean, I guess Mitchie is firmly on the hot seat based off of everything that we're seeing here from Smitty. I mean, this isn't it's very interesting to me to see so many people holding that conversation and having that opinion. I just don't agree. Now, again, it doesn't matter. I'm not going to be the one that makes that decision. That's above my pay grade. But I just don't feel. Here's a take for you. I think the Snowhawks are going to make the playoffs this year. So here we are in we're entering week 13. And for the better part of 2 weeks now, it's been kind of swirling, but it's probably behind the scenes been discussed for the majority of the season. And over the course of 5 weeks, I'm going to sit here on this show and I'm going to talk to you about how a coach is on the hot seat who I don't feel necessarily deserves to be. And at the end of it, might be in the playoffs. To which point that would be 3 playoff appearances in the last 4 years, one of which went to the Real Bowl. Now, again, that's tough. And so for all you other RFL coaches here, right, like we have to stay on our game. And then what does that look like? What does that look like? Let's say Mitchie does. Let's say the Snowhawks do go in a different direction. What does that mean? Where does he go from there? I believe there's a scenario where he stays in the league. I know most coaches that get let go are gone forever. But if this is an instance where, if it's a simple case of you have a really good guy and a good coach, and he's just not meeting expectations, well, guess what? That's real life. That's what it's like in real life. We see all the time in real life, guys get fired from one team and then go on to be head coaches at another team. That's normal. And so I like that. I think that is what makes this situation all the more intriguing, because we're not talking about a situation where he's going to be gone and whatever. We're going to be talking about a situation where, correct me if I'm wrong here, and Smitty will do it because I feel like Smitty's the only one chiming in here. Either that or Forbes. Smitty's the only one that Forbes wants to pull up here. But I believe we would be looking at a situation where we're talking about the first coach to get fired from one team and stay in the league. And again, I've only been in the league 3 years now, so I could be wrong. Forbes saying choosing my comments. Well, probably Pecan, because your comments are only Ohio State related. And to be fair, nobody cares. Nobody outside the state of Ohio cares about Ohio State. And I have a hard time taking a lot of the people in the state of Ohio seriously, because if Ohio State loses, all you do is start rooting for Kent State and Akron and Miami of Ohio. You'll root for anybody in the state of Ohio just so you can say somebody from the state of Ohio won. That's probably why Forbes isn't choosing your comments, because he knows my thoughts on the matter. But good segue there. I mean, we could sit here and talk about that, and it's not really worth it. Just rather interesting. I don't, if you're going to poll, right? I mean, if you're going to put a poll out there that says, do you think the Snowhawks should fire Coach O'Brien at the end of the season? If that were a poll, my vote for the poll would be no. But again, my vote for the poll doesn't matter. Your vote for the poll doesn't matter. It remains to be seen. Now, that win over the Steamers was a great win. And if I were Mitchie, I would be pointing to that and be like, okay, well, look, right? And whatever happens the rest of the way could be a very interesting barometer for what we might see at the end of the year. But again, I said it. There's a chance that the Snowhawks make the playoffs. And if the Snowhawks make the playoffs again, I don't know how they can part ways. All right, but we'll see. Give Mitchie the Condors. I love that you guys are calling out, highlight my comment. Perhaps we need to come up with an emoji. Maybe we'll come up with a special emoji, and if you put the emoji at the end of your comment, it will flag us and we'll know, okay, this is a legit one that they want highlighted. I guess we'll have to talk about that after. We'll come up with a specific emoji for that. All right, so we are 5 minutes to 8 o'clock. We've got the RFL podcast tonight at 8:30. I'll probably try to get you guys out of here a little bit earlier than normal. Certainly not going to run you all the way up to that 8:30 time. Give you a chance to take a break, go get something to eat, and get prepared for the recap of last week, the preview of this week, and certainly what the power rankings look like. But one thing that I am going to go over with you guys is I wanted to give you a little bit of an opportunity to have an opinion on some certain things. So I've created this new segment that I'm going to do. I hope you checked them sheets before you slept in them. I've actually got a black light over there that I plan on once, RFL all night. We should call it RFL after dark. So I plan on turning all the lights off. I've got my little black light and I'm going to run it through those sheets. And I promise, Bill, I will report back with my findings, perhaps even in photograph form. But good stuff there, Bill. All right. So I've got this segment that I'm going to do, and I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to chime in on this. One, this is solely for me to get your opinions on certain things, and these statements, I might have opinions on these, and I will opine on that, and I will give you my thoughts. But the whole point of this is to give you guys an opportunity to tell me what you think of these. So moving forward, we're going to have a segment called Love It or Shove It. And so what I'm going to do on Love It or Shove It, right? So let me pull this. Love It or Shove It every week I'm going to try to do. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw out bullet points. I'm going to throw out bullets, hot topics, whatever it might be, hot takes, and you guys have to tell me whether you basically agree or disagree, true or false. Do you love it or do you shove it? Right? So Again, I'm going to try to do this every week. If you have hot takes and you have a statement that you think is debatable or questionable and you want it to be part of Love It or Shove It, send it to me in DM and I will add it to the lineup. And in a future show, we will get it. I'll get it put in there for you. So I've got a list of topics. Dang, Pecan, you out on Mitchie or what? I missed the end of it there. So I've got a list of topics that I want to get through. And again, guys, in the comment section, I want to see your opinion, your thoughts. Do you love it or do you shove it? First comment here. Calvin Poole does not start a game this year. Calvin Poole does not start a game this year. Love it or shove it? Chris CP with the big pause. Let's see what we got here. Calvin Poole does not start a game this year. Why are we shoving it? So far, we've got 3 votes for love it. So again, guys agree, and maybe that's solely based on the performance of Wolf this past weekend. We've got to shove it. CP says shove it. Right? So CP doesn't believe that. CP believes that Calvin Poole will get a start. Wolf going to mess up soon. Right? So me, myself, I don't envision Calvin Poole getting a start. I think the Huskies are in a position where they can make the playoffs. They can win the division. And I don't think that you can entrust that stretch run to win a division, to make a playoff push on a rookie. I think, and Smitty talked about this last week, I think had they lost to the Bulldogs and had they lost, a couple games as we move forward, then you bring Calvin Poole in. Very similar to what we just saw with Joseph Fontanez. The Lancers are out of it. Okay, Fontanez, let's see what you got. If the Huskies got to a point where they weren't going to win the division and it was going to be very iffy on whether they could even make the playoffs, and let's say that came in week 16, if 3 weeks from now we're looking at the ARC North and we say, yeah, the Huskies aren't going to win the division, I don't even know that we could possibly say that. I don't know if there's anything that could happen in the next 2 weeks that would allow anyone in that division to not have a chance at winning the division with 3 weeks still to play. It would all come down to automatic wins and, who's getting those automatic W's. But again, Calvin Poole does not get a start this season. Love it or shove it. We got Coach Q, love it. Awesome Croc, love it. EA, love it. CP, shove it. You saw Wolf's going to mess up. What Awesome Croc will say? The only way I see him starting if they clinch, to be honest now. So that's an interesting point, right? Like, I guess that's the other scenario. I don't know how I feel about that. If you clinch, if the Huskies clinch, if they clinch a playoff spot, I'm certainly not. If they clinch the division and they go into week 18 and they have nowhere to go in the standings, they can't possibly go up, and they're literally playing for fun, maybe I could envision that scenario. That is a good point. For me, I love it. Calvin Poole does not start a game this year. Love it. I think the majority of you guys would agree. I think the consensus here from you guys in the chat is love it that Calvin Poole will not start a game this year. Let's move on to topic number 2 here. And this one I think will probably get a little bit more opinion out of you guys. The Portland Riverhogs are the biggest surprise in the ARC. Do you love that statement? or are you going to shove it? The Portland Riverhogs are the biggest surprise in the ARC. Now that could be surprise it's not descriptive. It could be a good surprise. It could be a bad surprise. Obviously here you would be referring to them as being a good surprise. But you could, if you feel that there is a team in the ARC that is a huge disappointment surprise, and that is a bigger surprise, that they are a disappointment, that's a bigger surprise than this, then you would be shoving it, right? So love it or shove it. The Portland Riverhogs are the biggest surprise in the ARC. Shove it has to be the Voyagers. So what's funny is as I was making the list of statements for love it or shove it, and I made this one, the Riverhogs are the biggest surprise in the ARC. The opinion that I thought I might see the most in the comments was shove it because of the Voyagers and them being a disappointment. So let's go out to the comments here. Let's see what we've got. Pecan, shove it. Strutter, where my shovel at? So you do not think that the Riverhogs are the biggest surprise. You think that the Black Knights are the biggest surprise. I assume you're saying the Black Knights are a surprise because they're so good. Smitty, shove it. Again, I think if you're shoving this and you're saying that the Riverhogs are not the biggest surprise in the ARC, 90% of you are saying that because of the Voyagers. And maybe there's some other teams. And if I'm wrong, and if it's not because of the sort of the fall of the Voyagers this year, then by all means, I'm curious to see. Armadillo's big surprise. So there's one. CP shoves it and says the Armadillos are the biggest surprise for me. Let's see if you're still saying that in 3 weeks, because in 3 weeks, you might be talking about the third place Armadillos. Like, is that really a surprise? Right? I mean, I've got the Armadillos in 2 weeks, and if we beat the Armadillos, they fall to they're in second place right now. And if I beat them next week, we've split the season series and it comes down to tiebreakers. And I've got 2 automatic wins the rest of the way. So we could be looking at a scenario where 3 weeks from now, the Armadillos are in third place and they've got nowhere to go. So, you know, you might think that the Armadillos are the biggest surprise right now, and that's fine. But I guess the one thing I would question, if you were saying that the Armadillos are the biggest surprise right now, what are you surprised by? You're surprised that they're in second place because you thought they would be in third or fourth? I assume that's what you're saying, is that the Armadillos are a surprise team for you because you felt like they were not going to be good and they are outperforming your expectations. I assume that this is a surprise in a positive way. And I guess to that, I would say they're in second place. They got swept by the Dreadnoughts this year. They beat us in week 2. But again, they beat us in week 2. I've got 5 rookies that are starting, and all 5 of those rookies have improved their overalls at least 3 to 4, if not 5 overalls since that game. So, I mean, listen, if the Armadillos beat us in 2 weeks, in week 14, then they've got a stranglehold on that second spot in the division. And if you want to say that the Armadillos being in second place is a bigger surprise to you than the Riverhogs and being in first place, then by all means. What else we got in here? I knew the team was good enough to be atop the standings. I mean, that's a little bit of bias, but okay. I mean, the team was there. The team was good. It's amazing also what a lot of people don't understand. It's always interesting to see. So someone like me who got to watch the Riverhogs for 2 years with no coach. Actually, I think my first year in the league, they did have a coach. I want to say he was let go midseason though. So it's always interesting to see what a team does when they don't have a coach, especially for an extended period of time, right? Like if you're looking at a team that hasn't had a head coach and they haven't had a coach for 3 or 4 years, and then they get a coach, it's always interesting. And that's a team that you want to look at. You want to go back and you want to look at the history and say, wow, this team was an 8-8 team for 4 years in a row. And then all of a sudden they get a user coach, and now all of a sudden they win the division. They get a first round playoff bye. Like it's always, or they get a user coach and they go from 8-8 and now they're worse, right? Like you hope that's not happening. Otherwise you'll find yourself on the hot seat a lot quicker than Mitchie did. Right. So I knew the team was good and good enough to be atop the standings. That team was good. I've said this previously. When I joined the league, I thought when I was joining that there were 6 teams that were available. But what I didn't realize was that a few of those teams had already been spoken for. There were coaches that were brought in. It must have been like days, weeks, and at most maybe a month or so before me, but it wasn't updated on the website for me to see that those teams had user coaches. So I remember going through the interview process to become a coach. And when I looked at the teams that at the time I thought were available and the teams that, maybe I just kind of like the uniforms, maybe I like the logo, the city, whatever it might be. The Portland Riverhogs were a team that I looked at. And I've said this before. I don't know if the front office remembers this, but I remember saying after my interview, when they offered me and they said, these are the 2 teams that you can choose from, I said, I thought the Riverhogs were available because I wanted the Riverhogs. But it turns out the options that were available were the Diablos or the Conquistadors, both Mexico City teams. So I took the Conquistadors. Obviously, in the following year's Madden, they removed the Conquistadors, so they were no longer even an option in the league. And that's when, the move was made to Sacramento. I'd like to say I had a little bit of a hand in that. There obviously weren't very many options for where the Conquistadors could relocate to. There's a Memphis team in the NRC, so we could have had a Memphis team in the ARC. But it would have had to be the Hounds or the Egyptians, and both of those uniforms suck. I think there was an option in San Antonio. No, there wasn't, because obviously the Dreadnoughts were there. To Fry's point, I'm glad I like the Miners. Prior to joining the league, I did a franchise with the Miners. I like the helmets. I like the gold, the shiny gold helmet. I think that's different than what a lot of the other teams in the RFL have. So, but the Riverhogs are good. And obviously this is a long tangent here to just basically say it's nice to see the Riverhogs and it's nice to see what Coach Q is doing with that team. So again, a few more topics I want to get here for Love It or Shove It before we get you guys out of here. Next one up, and we talked about it a little bit, love it or shove it, the Houston Voyagers playoff hopes are done. And I spelled done wrong. I'm sorry. It's supposed to be D-U-N-N. I do apologize. I spelled it wrong there. The Houston Voyagers playoff hopes are done. The Houston Voyagers will not make the playoffs. Love it or shove it. And if you need some context here for you, I will be happy to give it to you. Let's take a peek here at where we are in the standings. If you look at the Houston Voyagers, they are currently 3rd in the ARC West. The Riverhogs are 9-3. The Red Dragons are 8-3. The Voyagers are 6-5. Right. So we're talking about a scenario where they are 2 games behind the second place team. They probably don't have a chance to win that division at this point. They've lost 3 games in a row. And if you look at the schedule remaining, they have the Pioneers, so that could be a win, an automatic win for an NFL game back-to-back. So they just lost 3 games in a row, but if they beat the Pioneers, they will then win 3 games in a row. Then they have the Austin Armadillos, big playoff implications in that one. Week 16, the Houston Voyagers and the Austin Armadillos. I'm going to go ahead and say it here right now. The loser of that Week 16 game is not making the playoffs. The Austin Armadillos and the Houston Voyagers in Week 16, the loser will not make the playoffs. There's a chance that the winner doesn't make the playoffs, but the loser will definitely not make the playoffs. Then week 17, the Voyagers have an automatic win. So we've got 6 games remaining on the schedule for the Voyagers. 3 of them are automatic wins. And then they've got the Cougars in week 18, the Armadillos in week 16, and the Pioneers this week. So if you go back and you look at the fact that they have 3 automatic wins, they're 6-5 right now. They're guaranteed to get 9 wins. If they can win 2 of those 3 RFL games, that gets them to 11 wins. And does 11-6 get them in the playoffs? It remains to be seen what the Riverhogs and what the Red Dragons do the rest of the way. I will say the Riverhogs do have to play us. And obviously the Voyagers will have to look at the Riverhogs and the Red Dragons and what their schedule looks like, and they'll have to hope that those teams lose. But we'll go out to the chat here. The Houston Voyagers will not make the playoffs. Love it or shove it. Let's see, where am I going here? Timestamp. Let's see. Love it or shove it, where I went too far back. What do we got, guys? Where are you at? They have a good chance to win out from here, though. That's not an answer, Smitty. Love it or shove it. Love it means they're not going to make the playoffs. Shove it means they are going to make the playoffs. Don't be Switzerland. Don't sit on the fence. Love it or shove it, guys. Let's go. Have an opinion. You guys want to throw me to the wolves about my opinions and my takes, and yet you sit here and I give you every opportunity to have a take, and you play Switzerland. Here we go, Pecan, shove it. So Pecan thinks that the Voyagers will make the playoffs. And again, to Smitty's point, they could win out. They got 6 games left. 3 of them are automatic wins. The Cougars are not what we thought they were, right? Like there's an old NFLism for you right there. They're not who we thought they were. And in week 18, we could be talking about a situation where the Cougars don't have anything to play for. And if the Cougars don't have anything to play for, then maybe they're not starting their everyday starters. Maybe they're starting some younger guys. That remains to be seen. Coach Baker going to come in here and shove the mess out of this. I hope so. Baker's my boy. I don't like him lose. I don't like seeing him lose 3 games in a row. If you told me that Baker was going to have, if Baker and the Voyagers were going to have 5 losses this year, and one of them wasn't to the Miners, I'd be upset. I'm upset. If the Voyagers are 6-5 on the year, and one of those 6 wins is one of those RFL wins, they've got 2 RFL wins. So there are 3-5 in RFL games. And one of those RFL wins is against the Miners, is against us. And granted, it was the last second, and it was a close game. But the Voyagers got the win. All right, so let's get a couple more here, guys. CP, love it. He doesn't think that the Voyagers are going to make the playoffs. Again, guys, I said this at the beginning. The whole love it or shove it is – I'm not really forming an opinion up until, going over it with you guys. I had not looked – prior to this, I had not looked at their remaining schedule. How many automatic wins they had the rest of the way. But the fact that they're 6-5, and they have 3 automatic wins, at minimum, they're going to get to 9. Now, here's why I'm going to love it. Because the Riverhogs and the Red Dragons are ahead of them. And if I look at the Riverhogs and the Red Dragons, right? So the Red Dragons have already beaten the Voyagers twice. And the Riverhogs beat the Voyagers once. So without going too far into the potential tiebreaker scenario, there's not an obvious tiebreak win for the Voyagers. If they have the same record as the Riverhogs get it because they swept them. If they have the same record as the Red Dragons, it's going to come down to overall division record because they split the season series. And so for that reason, I'm going to say love it. I don't think the Voyagers make the playoffs. I think they get those 3 automatic wins. That gets them to 9. I think they get at least 1 RFL win. That gets them to 10. But even if they get 2 RFL wins and that gets them to 11 and 6 without the benefit of a tiebreak against the Riverhogs or the Red Dragons is going to be tough to do. Right? Because you look at the Red Dragons, they've got 8 wins right now. And if you look at the Red Dragons schedule, 1, 2 automatic wins. So the Red Dragons are guaranteed to get to 10 wins. So the Voyagers would have to get to 11 wins. And in order to get to 11 wins, they'd have to take those 3 automatic wins and then win 2 more. And that's going to be tough, especially if the Voyagers play the way that they've been playing. And that's unfortunate because just like Mitchie 2 years ago, we're talking about a team that went to the Reload Bowl. I'm sorry, they didn't go. The Voyagers, no, they did go to the Reload Bowl. The Voyagers went. They went to the Reload Bowl last year, lost, and now are staring down the barrel of not making the playoffs. And so we're seeing this trend here where whoever loses the Reload Bowl this year, you got your work cut out for you. Because if history is any indication, the loser of the Reload Bowl is going to have a very difficult time making the playoffs the following season. The Snowhawks didn't do it. And now we're looking at a scenario where the Voyagers don't do it. And quite honestly, I think the only way the Voyagers get in the playoffs is if they win out. They'd have to win. They just lost 3 games in a row. They'd have to win 6 in a row, technically 3, because 3 of them are automatic wins. So again, a lot of you guys love it there. Yes, Baker did re-sign Glenn Hay. So for those of you pounding the gavel, I wanted to put Monty Wyatt in the next man up segment earlier, but when I was going through and researching, Glenn Hay was re-signed. So Glenn Hay was going to be a free agent at the end of the year. He was re-signed, and I believe he's re-signed a 2-year extension. So technically, I think they call it a 3-year extension, but one of those years is referring to the year we're already in, which he was already under contract in. So it's really only 2 additional years. So Glenn Hay is the quarterback there for 2 more years. So if you're a big Monty Wyatt fan, you might have to wait a little bit longer for that torch to be passed. I want to get you guys out of here a little bit before. So we've got just I think 1 or 2 more here. In Love It or Shove It. I love this bit, guys. I'm glad that, I hope you guys are enjoying it. I'm glad that, it gives you guys a chance to sort of have those hot takes and voice those opinions. So we got 2 more here. Love It or Shove It. The Columbus Aviators are going to win the ARC North. The Columbus Aviators are going to win the ARC North. And again, I'll give you guys a little bit of context here. Right now, every single team in the ARC North is 7-5. If you look at the standings, the Bulls are in first, the Cougars are in second, the Aviators are in third, and the Huskies are in last. Again, they all have the same exact record. So that is solely based off of tiebreakers. And if you look at division record, the Bulls are 2-0 in the division. The Cougars are 1-2 in the division. And then the Aviators are 2-3 in the division. So that's where it's going to be tricky. And then the Huskies are 2-2 in the division. So the problem that the Aviators are going to have, and this is why, again, love it or shove it. If you think the Aviators are going to win the ARC North, then you love it. If you do not think the Aviators are going to win the ARC North, then you shove it. And if I had to pick here, I would be shoving this. simply because they're all tied right now. They're all 7-4. So, and not just are they all 7-4, but the Aviators have the worst division record. And they only have one more divisional game left. So best case scenario is the Aviators finish 3-3 in the division. And right now, the Bulls are 2-0 in the division. They still have 4 games left against divisional opponents. Now, maybe they go 2-4 in the division and they lose all 4 of those remaining divisional contests. It's possible. And if they do, well, then the Bulls will certainly fall out of first place. But the Bulls, the Cougars, the Aviators, and the Huskies are all 7-4. So the Columbus Aviators win the ARC North. I'm going to shove it. Simply, I'm just looking at numbers. I'm just looking at percentages. I would say right now, every team has a 25, maybe not every team has a 25% chance. Maybe the Bulls have a 27% chance. The Cougars and Aviators have a 25% chance, and the Huskies have a 23% chance of winning that division. Again, I'm just randomly throwing out percentages. But when all the teams are 7-4, they all have the same record, and it's all going to come down to potentially divisional record or head-to-head tie breaks. I can't love this. I can't love the Columbus Aviators winning the ARC North, and so for that reason, I've got to shove it. If we go out to the chat here, we've got CP, shove it to the ground. Of course you would. Strotter, shove it. Smitty, shove it. Smitty goes even further. Again, they got to play the Bulls, the Dreadnoughts, CT, and the Bulldogs. Like, that's a hard schedule. Forget about the difficulty of the schedule. If the schedule was easy, I would probably still shove it. Again, just based on odds. Based on the fact that the Bulls still have 4 division games left. If the Bulls win 2 of those division games and the Bulls finish 4-2 in the division, they're probably winning that division. I think that would get them to 11 wins. 11-6 in that division with a 4-2 record in the division. That's going to be good enough. This division beats up on each other. We're not getting a 13-game winner out of the ARC North. We're not getting a 12-game winner, I don't think. All those teams are 7-4. I don't think any of them win out. I don't think the ARC North gets a 12-4 team. I'm sorry, 13-4 now. I think best case scenario is 12-5, but legitimately, we could be talking about 11-6 wins that division. So for me, I'm going to shove it. I think most of you agree here on shove it. The Columbus Aviators are not going to win the ARC North. For me, it's just based on odds. You saw for Smitty, it's based on strength of schedule moving forward. That is a gauntlet to have to face the Bulls, the Dreadnoughts, the Celtic Tigers, and the Bulldogs. Those are all teams that have deep playoff run aspirations. And in the case of the Bulldogs, it's in their own division, and they're already behind the 8 ball. All right, so final topic for Love It or Shove It. We kind of touched on this a little bit, but I did have it in here. And so this will be the final topic for Love It or Shove It. I'll get you guys out of here on this one. The Portland Snowhawks, I said this, the Portland Snowhawks will make the playoffs. Love it or shove it. And again, I will always give you guys the benefit of context and let you know kind of what you're looking at, so you can form a bit of a more educated response instead of just going based off of whether or not you like the team. So if we take a quick peek here at the Portland Snowhawks, they're not out of it. Right? So love it or shove it, the Portland Snowhawks make the playoffs this year. Right now, they find themselves in 3rd place in the division. They're 7-5, but the Condors are 7-4. So really, they're only a half a game behind the Condors. And the Elks are 8-3. So we're talking about a scenario here where the Snowhawks, yes, they are in 3rd place in the division. However, their 2-2 record in the division is not crushing them. The Condors are only 7-4, and the Elks are 8-3. So there's obviously a scenario where the Snowhawks can make the playoffs. But now you be the judge. Will the Snowhawks make the playoffs? Love it or shove it. Let's go out to the chat here for the final time and see what you guys think of the Portland Snowhawks. Anthony Fry here, love it. So Fry's on board, thinks that the Snowhawks will make the playoffs. Smitty again is obviously chiming in from Switzerland. It depends on if they beat the Elks. If they do, I love it. I don't want to hear caveats. I want love it or shove it. Don't be afraid. Have a take. Let's see. I think injuries will be their downfall. So it sounds like CP is shoving it. What's Coach Q got here? They have to beat their last 2 RFL teams, Elks and Condors, because they have NFL wins the rest of the way. And those are not easy games. So again, you take a peek, like Coach Q says, the Snowhawks schedule, they've got the benefit of some automatic wins here. So they've got 4 automatic wins. No, they've got 5 games left. They only have 5 games left. 3 automatic wins. And those 3 automatic wins end the year. Right? So keep that in mind when you want to say shove it, the Snowhawks aren't going to make the playoffs. Week 16, 17, and 18 are automatic wins for the Snowhawks. So we're going to know in probably week 14. Week 14, the Snowhawks have a bye. We'll probably know in week 14 whether or not the Snowhawks are going to make the playoffs. If the Snowhawks beat the Elks this week, they probably make the playoffs because they have automatic win week 16, 17, and 18. So for me, again, I said this earlier, I do love this. I am buying the Snowhawks making the playoffs. I don't necessarily know that they're going to win the division, but I do think that the benefit of having 3 automatic wins at the end of the season is going to be huge for the Snowhawks. And if that's the case, watch out for the Snowhawks in the playoffs, because what is Mickey going to be able to do for 3 consecutive weeks? He's going to be able to scheme however he wants and try out new stuff. And it'll be stuff that no one saw in the regular season. It'll be completely new. So no one's going to have the benefit of going back and looking at tape and looking at their tendencies and what they do in certain situations. You aren't going to have that luxury if Coach O'Brien decides to go that route and maybe switch things up. He's going to have 3 weeks to be able to look at playbooks and possibly make any changes. And again, I haven't looked to see if he has any changes left to be made, but that remains to be seen. So last chance, anyone else in the chat? And peace out, Smitty. I'll see you, bud. So yeah, that's it. I think we've got everyone. No one else really had a opinion here. Hopefully you guys will get, hopefully you guys get a little bit spicier next week. If I have to come up with spicier ones, I will. But really, guys, like, there's nothing stopping you from sending me these statements, right? Come up with a statement. Send it to me in DM, and I will add it to Love It or Shove It. And we'll get it on next week, and we'll see if people agree with you. You might have a take. You might have a hot take and think that you're the only one that feels that way. Get in here, Love It or Shove It, and we'll find out. We'll find out if you're alone. But until then, guys, I appreciate everyone chiming in. If you haven't had the opportunity yet, please go ahead and hit the like button for me. I believe most of you are already subscribed to the channel, so I appreciate you. If you haven't, then please go ahead and do so. We've got the RFL podcast getting ready to go live right now. So until next time, guys, I appreciate you stopping by. Again, hit me up in the DMs if you have something you want to add to Love It or Shove It. But until next week, I am your host, head coach, and general manager of the Sacramento Miners, Chris Dunn, signing off. Till next time, take care, everybody, and enjoy RFL all night.